Welcome to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast. I'm your host, Kojo Baffoe. In this podcast, I speak to Africans from across a multitude of sectors, including business, art, culture, media, design, technology, advertising, and everything in between, delving into their journeys and reflecting on the lessons they have learned along the way. It's about gaining insight into why and how they do what they do. These conversations offer a treasure trove of takeaways on a wide range of topics, including craft, relationships, wellness, parenting, entrepreneurship, and much more. So my guest today is Jean Daniel Kanza, an artist and entrepreneur currently based in Kinshasa, DRC. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Kojo.
Where were you born?
I was born in the clinic Ngalema in Kinshasa. It was Zaire at the time. Yeah.
Actually, quick sidebar. I still have Zairean currency because my father used to travel there a lot when I was growing up. And I keep saying, I was actually showing my son the other day, and his first question is, I wonder if it's worth anything.
It's the coolest notes that you'll see.
With Mobutu on it.
With Mobutu on it, yeah. Irregardless of what you think, it's cool. Mobutu was cool. Like, you can disagree, but he was cool. Like, there's a whole movie made about him, coming to America. So I was born in that era. Who's Joffrey Joffel, Who else could that be? And that lifestyle. But yeah, that's where I was born, and very cultural. Zaire was more cultural than Congo. Congo's a whole different thing. So yeah, that's where I was born.
How would you describe the family you were born into?
I was born into a family with a lot of pressure. We are arguably probably the most decorated academic family in Africa that I know of. My great-grandfather, who I'm named after, Daniel Kanza, he was part of the delegation at the round table. He was part of a party called Abako, which is the Association of Bakongo, because I am Mukongo. That's my tribe. So, excuse me. And then his sons and daughters were automatically in the first government hookup, So my grandfather was the first black accountant after colonization. His brother was the first representative to the United Nations for the Congo. My great aunt was the first female. She was the first female to go to university and also to be a minister. And then by the time I was born, the dynasty was already damaged. And so I was born into a lot of culture, a lot of history, a lot of education, a lot of morals. That's the family I was born into. And then that's my dad's family. And then my mom's family is just like blue collar, work hard, get a job, security. So I grew up between those two worlds. Yeah.
You'd mentioned that you moved to South Africa when you were about 5.
5 years old, yes.
What prompted that? Obviously you weren't part of the decision making.
Yeah, I was just watching Ninja Turtles and then we were on a plane. But now that I know what's going on, in 1991 and 2, there was the pillage, like we call it, which is happening now, ironically. This is when stores are being rioted and looted and things like that. And then that crippled the economy even more. And then, my mom and dad just wanted us to have a better life and a better education. And then, like we came here. And my mom was working for Al Zaire. So that helped as well, at the time. Yeah, she was.
Where did you move to?
We moved to Yeoville. Straight to Yeoville, which is nothing that someone can imagine today. Totally different place at the time. Yeoville was heaven, man. Like a nice Jewish neighborhood, plants everywhere, the park. I tried to get into KS, didn't make it. I went to Yeoville Community, which was still a very good school at the time. We had music classes, just to tell you. And I moved to Yeoville when it was just you go to the store, you could bump into a Skido and Boom Shaka and Winnie Mandela. It's 1995 World Cup, so Rocky Streets. I still have these memories. So yeah, Yeovil, beautiful Rainbow Nation. That's what I moved into. So that's like South Africa was perfect for me as a kid when I got here. Yeah.
How old are you when the Rugby World Cup win?
5. That's the same year. So I got here during the same year.
Interesting, because
Yeah.
so I was not 5, but I was actually
I couldn't tell. I thought we were around the same age.
but I was actually in Yeovil that night. Because friends of mine, I used to come up for business, and a friend of mine stayed in Hillbrow, and so I remember on that night kind of being on the street.
Yes,
because
everyone was on the street that night.
It was a party, but obviously a different party for me compared
to I was on my dad's shoulders and just watching everything happen. But I'm sure you had a better time than I did.
So if I'd met you, I mean, how long did you guys stay in kind of the Yeovil area?
We stayed in Yeovil until 1997, so 2 years.
Okay.
And then from there, we moved to Boksburg. So a totally different environment.
Yeah.
But like another white neighborhood. Because Boksburg at the time was still whiter than it is now. But a bit different because Yeovil was like, you know how it was back then? It's like kind of everyone knows everyone. And then you go to Boksburg where it's like no one comes out the house. Which was okay because I was young. So as long as I have a yard, my imagination was always on overdrive. So I never had a problem. All I needed was a space.
Do you have any siblings?
Yes, I have 2 younger sisters.
Okay.
They're in America now.
So if I'd met you, say, 10 years old.
When I was 10 years old?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I'd met you, say, 10, 12 years old, and I said to you, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? At that time, what would have been your answer?
10, 12 years old, John Singleton or Spike Lee. That's what I would have said. Because they were my biggest influences at the time. My passion is cinema, always has been. And I remember, I think I was 10 or 11, and my dad is like, what do you want to become? And I said, I wanted to become a filmmaker. And he's like, okay, you're young, you're into hip hop, you have to know these 2 guys, John Singleton and Spike Lee. And my dad would say I couldn't go out if I couldn't. So my dad was a big fan of Barry Range. So he'd make me do like a review of every single Spike Lee. So like we'd go to Videotown. You know what I'm saying? For those kids out there, Google Videotown. It's Netflix before Netflix. So we'll go to video. So I could pick whatever movie I wanted to. My sisters as well. Obviously they'll pick whatever, Barbie or whatever. And then I had to pick one Spike Lee or one John Singleton or one Mario Van Peebles, film. So that's, I got into, because before that I was into action films, like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Rambo and things like that. So 10, 11, that's when I started reading heavily because my dad would just bring me books. And so like, yeah, John Singleton or Spike Lee, 10, 11. That's where my mind was at.
What were your parents doing?
My mom.
I asked that question because when you say, you know, your father being able to understand and go, okay, yes, you want to be a filmmaker, but if you want to be a filmmaker, you must also understand within context of being Black or being African. Here are 2 very specific filmmakers, and the fact that you even bring Melvin Van Peebles, because Melvin Van Peebles, for me, is still the older generation.
Yes.
So, you know, Spike Lee and John Singleton is...
And Mario are the newer generation.
And like I grew up with, well, you know, when Do the Right Thing came out, I was early 20s. So it's a different relationship. So for me, it's interesting with your father looking at you as a, say, 10, 12-year-old.
Yes.
And you saying, I want to be a filmmaker, and going, okay, that is a possibility, but you must therefore understand this history.
Yes.
So I asked that question, try and get a sense of kind of your parents and where their head was at, which then would influence how they raised you and your sisters.
Yeah. So on my dad's side, it was not only political and academic, it's also very musical. So my other great uncle founded the National Institution of Arts in the Congo, and then my mom's family, they also musicians. So I was born into academics, politics, arts, and all of this type of things. And then my father, well, he likes to think he's a revolutionary. I have my doubts because for me, it's not theoretic, it's practical. But my father, since I was a little boy, would tell me about Malcolm X and the Black Panthers. I didn't really care, right? But it's part of the household. So my father, politician, tries his best to be that politician, political analyst. So when we came to South Africa at the time, I think he was consulting for Kosatu, because his political ideology changes from time to time. So at the time, he was communist. And that's where actually in our flat in Yeovil, Figilin Balula and all these guys would come because they were still in the youth league at the time. Mm-hmm. So that's what my father was doing. Just he's always in and around politics, and my mother was in aviation. My mother, yeah. So that's what my parents were doing. But in essence, because my parents came to South Africa before us, a year before. So they came in 1994. I don't know if people know, but like from 1990 to 1994, there was a lot of Congolese people that came to South Africa because there was an exodus of white professionals. So we had a lot of professionals just sitting at home. Mm. So Mandela was like, yo, come through. So doctors and professors, that's the period that they came, and my parents came through that period. So he came, I think my mom said they came like a week before the elections. So that was interesting. So they were there when Nelson Mandela actually became the president. So that's what my parents were doing. And like for as long as like before we moved to South Africa, politics and art was around me. And my grandfather actually, he's been like, my father's the one that gave me like the fundamentals, but my grandfather was always my biggest supporter when it came to the space. And this is before we moved to South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, I was in South Africa at that period, but actually left a couple of days before the elections to go home to Lesotho because I was staying at home at Maseru then.
Was it for security reasons or?
Well, I figured if things burn, I'd rather be at home than stranded in Durban on campus in res. I mean, although we also experienced our own, own transitions within tertiary. Because so I started university in 1992, which was very interesting because it's 2 years before the elections.
Yes.
And that period is when there's so much change happening. And I happened to be in the middle of a kind of liberal South African university. So, I mean, some of my former varsity mates are in senior positions in business and senior positions in politics. So it's
just cool.
It's interesting to see how we've kind of all evolved over the time. But when you live through history, it's only with hindsight that you'll recognize the importance of those moments.
Absolutely. In 1992, when it was the looting, I think that was the last big one. I actually remember the bullets flying past. My mom had me on. I mean, like, I'm sure most black people like always got like a mom story, but I think that's the most iconic mom. I mean, on top of all the other iconic stories I have about my mother, but my mother's a teacher by profession. So at the time, yes, she was doing aviation, but when we were still staying in Congo, she was teaching, and she was actually teaching at a school that belonged to my great aunts. And when the looting broke out, because these things are spontaneous, it's never like it's gonna happen. And like she carried me on her back, hiding behind trees and ducking and diving, and it was incredible. Like as a kid, just seeing the bullets, it's just like red flashes. And I found it exciting at the time, but now I'm like, yo, it couldn't have been exciting for my mom. And I remember we got home, usually it would take us an hour to get home. We probably took like 10 hours to get home. And I remember my grandfather waiting for us at the gate. And as we came onto the street, there was a tank just passing. And after the tank passed out, I saw my grandfather. So 1992 was dope for us. But in 1994, I don't remember what I was doing. I don't remember what I was doing. Just being a child.
It's fortunate that you had that liberty to a certain extent with being a child because I mean, and when we first met, we were kind of talking about what's been going on in the history of DRC and Congo and different parts of the continent, where there's so much turmoil. It's the sadness is children not being children not being able to be children.
Yes.
And I guess that's what, to a certain extent, being in South Africa gave you.
I mean, Congo or Zaire at the time, as much as my parents were comparing it to when they were growing up, right? Which was a totally different country. But if I have to compare what it was to now, it was way better. I never felt that I lacked anything when we lived in Congo, right? Compared to when I see kids now who stay in the same area that I grew up in, it's like I feel bad for them because at least I guess I got the last bits of any decency of that country. And obviously moving to South Africa is obviously amplified being a child, you know? I mean, in Yeovil, there was the markets where they closed down the streets and like there's a train or you could go and ride a horse in Piccadilly Center. I remember these things. So obviously South Africa was the amplification, but I was fortunate because some of us from the Congo, or most of us from the Congo, already had family overseas. So I already knew what McDonald's was before I got to South Africa because my aunt worked for Swiss Air. So she'd always bring me stuff from Switzerland. And so we grew up, I think the infrastructure fazed me more than anything, but like restaurants and Pizza Huts.
With an element of privilege.
Of privilege, I was already hip to. Yeah.
What did you, so going from I want to be a filmmaker, which is great as a dream, and I was reading something the other day, it's like, there's the things that we have as dreams, but there's the things that we're willing to, let's say, struggle for.
Yes.
When you finished high school, you didn't go and study film.
Nah, those after fees were a bit hectic, eh? When finished high school, so when I was in high school, can we go there a little bit?
Yeah.
So my strongest subjects was English, business economics, and history. So I think I was the top history student from grade 1 to grade 11. I don't know. In grade 11, I caught the rap bug. What a late time to catch it. But through high school, it was academic and sports. So I was big on soccer because no one else played basketball. Like none of my friends played basketball. So I was like, okay, I'm going to play soccer. And athletics. So beginning of high school, 100, 200, like long distance. And then those guys faster than me, so I just did that. And then when I got to grade 11, it was like, I was like, I'm quitting sports and I'm going to focus on my academics. And in my grade 11 report, I think was my best high school report because I was totally focused. And I get to matric, and this is when I want to rap. In matric, this is when I rap. Like, what a random time to want to rap. And at this time, I'm not even thinking about what I want to do next because in grade 11, I'm like, I just want to get distinctions. I just want to study, get distinctions so I can have a better future. I get to matric, I start rapping. My marks are decent. So I'm like political science or film. And then film's not going to happen because I can't afford the APSA. Wow. Sorry. Am I allowed to say that? The after fees, film school fees, sorry. And then I'm just like, I didn't do Afrikaans on higher grade. And I have to go redo Afrikaans so I can get into WITS and do political science. So I'm like, what are the other options? What am I good at? Business economics. Okay, I'm going to go study marketing. And I ended up in marketing. And I'm like, I can always use this to sell my art. So that's how I saw it. So I'm like, I'm always going to find a way to come back to the arts. And also as a typical Black African person, let me just go to school, you know, so my mom can be happy. But I took a gap year.
Okay.
And in that gap year, that's actually when I developed myself as an entertainer, in that gap year with my friends. Forced gap year, by the way. And then after that gap year, that's when I started university.
What do you mean forced gap year?
There was no money, dog. You know, there was no money. But it was also, this is 2008. So this is when like the hip hop scene is blowing up in South Africa. So it just happened that this is when I have my gap year. So there was all the time to go to the events and the cyphers and the dance competition because like back then dance was like the main form of hip hop. That's the form of hip hop that had like the lights because it was a struggle, man. Like now I'm walking past Joburg and everyone looks like a rapper. I remember when we used to get crucified for looking like that. This is not America. Hey, 50 Cent, get out of here. You know, stuff like that. Taxi rank, gotta pull your pants up. coming back from events, tucking your chains and stuff like that. So it just so happened that my gap year and this boom in hip hop was happening. Yeah, and then I went back to school the year afterwards, and then ever since then, it's just been like a roller coaster. Yeah.
I was listening to talk about having to do Afrikaans.
Yes.
And I noticed that you speak a couple of languages, but you do speak, is it Lingala, your language?
Lingala, yes.
Lingala,
Yeah.
and French. Was that still spoken in the home? Because I mean, if you're in South Africa, it's very easy to lose kind of, let's call it your inverted commas home languages.
Yeah. Well, here comes my mom again. Hi, Mom. So my dad was raised in England. So when we moved to South Africa, automatically he spoke to us in English. So my mom is actually an expert in linguistics. Like I said, she's a teacher. So she speaks French, Latin, a whole bunch of African languages as well. And she's like, she can't speak Zulu, but like she understands it fully. So she's just like that. And she always told us, one day you're going to go back to Congo. Moms know everything. And she's like, and when you go back, you need to be able to communicate. And I was like, what is this lady talking about? So she spoke to us in French and Lingala at the house. Even if we spoke in English, she spoke in French and Lingala. I started speaking to my mom in English when I moved back to the DRC. So she made sure that we spoke in, and it helped because now I'm a global citizen. So that's how we kept it. If it wasn't for my mom, because my dad just spoke in English.
But I mean, it must have really helped when you moved back to Congo. Because,
Absolutely.
I mean, there's often a disconnect, particularly with those of us who are immigrants. And like my father left Ghana, and I have an interesting relationship with Ghana because I never grew up there, and I never spent time there. That I don't speak any of the languages.
What's the longest you've spent in Ghana?
A month.
Wow.
That was in 2019.
Wow. It's crazy. Remember when we met, I told you that my ancestors are from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy story. Yeah.
I mean, that's tied to what we were talking about, which is the idea of Africa. Once you remove the borders created by, let's say, the Berlin Conference.
Yeah.
Then the idea of Africa and countries and origins and culture and heritage and ownership becomes very, very different because it was a lot more fluid, and it was, people moved around a lot more.
I don't think that's how my great-grandfather got to the Congo, but I agree with that as well. That, I mean, the Treaty of Berlin is one of the worst things that's happened to us. But yeah, my great-grandfather got to Congo through forced labor, building the railways from the Gold Coast to the Cape, through the Belgian Congo at the time. Wow. It was actually called the Belgian Congo at the time. And so I'm the only person that's the shade in my family. So he met a mixed race woman. I don't know, this is international, so I don't know what country, I can't say colored, mixed race woman. So my great-grandmother, her mother was 16 and raped by a colonial, what you call them? The guys that were in charge of the territory at the time. So yeah, bro, cats out the hat. I've never said this out in public, but like, I have some Belge in me, And then so what's interesting is back then they keep all the mixed race babies with the nuns. The nuns would keep them because people couldn't see that you could have that relationship. And I actually went to visit that monastery. It's in Mwanda. Mwanda that's how the Portuguese got into Congo, through Mwanda.
Yeah. So my younger sister did one of those DNA. My brother-in-law's English, but they did a DNA. Those DNA kind of tests that show your roots and stuff. And you're the only one this shade in your family.
Yes.
I'm the only one this shade in my family.
So you understand the vibes.
Although I always say I'm the white sheep of my family because
Yeah.
I'm the only my mother's only child. But I've been saying I should actually go and do it because I guess sometimes it makes for interesting reading in terms of when we look at the migrations.
Yes.
It kind of shows you the migration because her mother is from Lesotho, father from Ghana, and yes, there's that in the DNA, but then there's also East Africa, and even kind of across kind of like Namibia area.
Yeah.
And then my brother-in-law is English and has a large percentage of German in him. So I keep saying I want to try it out just to see whether one can map where your people really come from.
Have you ever felt like you belong somewhere? Because in my experience, I've never been Congolese enough and I've never been South African enough.
So that's the I don't know. I don't want to use the word. When I was younger, I'd have used the word curse.
Yeah.
But for me, that's the lot. That's kind of it comes with those of us who, have migrated and lived in different places. I call it kind of living on the edge, on the edges.
It's totally edgy.
It's living on the edges of stuff.
Yeah.
So I have never felt like I belong. And when I was younger, it was a problem. And I have come to I've made peace with that. So when I was saying, for example, most of my family is your complexion. So even within my family, so within my father, my brothers and sisters, I am the odd one out.
And then being an artist on top of it, I think it just adds, because it's already complicated to be an artist, and to be an artist in the world where like you don't fit in. I mean, now I wear it, like I'm in my own world and like I do whatever I want. But it was really hard to choose this path and still be dark skinned and still be Congolese and still be African and not be accepted here. And then you move back to Congo and they call you South African. And it's just like, but I think it's beautiful. Like you said, I felt like it was a curse, but now it's an advantage because I feel like I can fit in anyway. It's people that want to put you in a box.
What prompted the move? At what stage did you decide, or at what stage did you move back to Congo? Because I mean, you're here, you're doing the music. I know you went to university, you didn't finish for various personal reasons, but
Yes.
and then you're working and you're doing stuff.
Yeah.
Why then move? Because at that stage, I'm assuming that you've spent the bulk of your life here.
Yeah, like my whole life.
And then you're going to move back to DRC.
Well, there were certain factors back then, and looking back, I can give you what I feel were the factors now. But back then, I was completely frustrated with South Africa because, like you said, I spent my whole life here, and I just felt like there was always a ceiling. So the first issue is the documentation issue, as you would know, because you're from Ghana and Lesotho. I don't think our South African friends understand. Because we go to the same schools, because we speak in the same accents, they think our lives are the same. And I don't know, my parents kind of messed that up. And we were asylum seekers. So basically an asylum seeker is a refugee. And you have this asylum seeker paper, which allows you to work and study in South Africa on paper. But like you can go for an interview and they're like, oh, we love you so much. They're like, okay, just send us your ID and all that. And like, oh, sorry. So there's always like that. And then I got used to it, but I was fortunate enough. I don't even know an asylum seeker that's had as many jobs as me in so many big companies, like I've been blessed. But it was always like, at that point, I felt like you're about to hit it and then you don't. So for example, I became the face of Metro FM, got this really big paycheck, and then I got nothing for the next like 8 months. So every time I thought I was about to hit that mark, it would just bring me back down. And like, I guess years and years of frustration and people telling you to go back to your country, I ended up doing that, just going back to my country. And I also felt that your popularity needs to match your bank accounts. So I was tired of being a figure and like getting free stuff and guest list and VIP. And I was like, yo, where the money at? And also I've always had like a boss mentality. So even when I was like the face of a campaign or anything, I wouldn't be hanging out with the celebs. I'd always be with the PR people or the marketing people because I've always wanted to like. So I know like this is like a weird time to say it, but it's the truth. Like Diddy was Puff. He was my benchmark. Puff and Master P. They were the first examples of businessmen for me. It wasn't Warren Buffett. I have to be honest. Like the first time I heard CEO was from Puff. So like they always showed me that you could be this cool guy, you could always be a businessman. And then when I started doing a couple of campaigns, I was like, yo, this doesn't make sense. And when I figured that agency is that's where the money's at, I was like, I want to sit at the table, and couldn't happen. So I was frustrated. I did this ad for this alcohol company. They didn't pay. My landlord's knocking. I can't go to the store because everyone recognizes me, and I don't care about that because I'm buying the Pick and Pay bread, the Pick and Pay bread that you just slice. So I was just like, I'm just going to go home. Effort. I'm going home. And yeah, I just packed my bags and I left. To the world, it looked like I was about to reach my peak, but to me, I couldn't do it anymore. Like, it was a facade.
So going back home, it's one thing to go, okay, do you know what? Deal with all of this. I'm going to go back home. At what stage do you go, okay, when I'm home, this is what I'm going to do? Was it just okay, get home and then figure it out from there?
Well, also, a lot of people used to like tweet me and be like, oh, you need to come home. Like what you're doing in South Africa is cool, but you have a bigger impact at home. The kids need you. So there was already some friends that also moved back before me. And I was just like, yo, like, why is all my homies like in like Mercs and like they're all married and they're all doing these big things that we weren't even talking about. And then a former friend of mine came to see me at my place and she was like, I'm about to start this media agency in Congo. There's nothing happening over there. And with your experience and what you're doing over here. So like I already had an idea that I was going to be in that space. So I already knew when I got there that media, for me, it was like, okay, I'm coming with this rich portfolio from South Africa, which is the benchmark on the continent. So I already knew. I just didn't know how I was going to do it. But I knew I had 3-4 friends on the ground. So I was fortunate enough already to have people over there that orientated me. And of course, my mom had moved back already. And she's the one that orientated me in like kind of like the corporate and political space as well.
So what do you do?
Yo, I do fly shit, man. That's what I do. That's what I live. And I try to live all my dreams. I can safely say I've lived the majority of my childhood dreams and now I'm chasing my adult dreams. I live, because I hate that question. What do you do? Because we're able to do so many things.
So I ask it because I want to get a sense of the specifics of, it's like, okay, I moved back to Congo.
Okay.
There's these opportunities in these different spaces. Conversations that we had previously, and it's a conversation that's weirdly enough cropped up for me quite a lot in the recent past, is going to work or coming to work in South Africa versus going to work in most countries across the continent requires a slightly different lens.
Yes.
And that's because the corporate structure is so entrenched in South African economy. For a lot of people, it's, okay, I'm going to come here and look for a job and work in a particular space and work my way up. But for most of the countries, at least the ones that I know of on the continent, that side of kind of the economy is very limited. So when you go into a space I mean, so for example, when I was looking to, which I'm still toying with, but when I was really looking to get involved in let's say the Ghanaian economy by actually doing stuff, and I was looking at actually potentially moving my family to Ghana, or when I go to Lesotho, my whole thing was, okay, I need to go to figure out the lay of the land, and figure out what I'm going to do. Going to look for a job is not an option.
Yeah.
It's not on the list, right? Yeah. And sometimes the things that, I mean, I was talking to a friend recently, and he has a beach resort.
Wow.
And he's in farming.
That's where
and
I'm trying to be.
So he's doing several things that feel very unrelated to each other, which I find with a lot of entrepreneurs across the continent, outside of South Africa. So when I say, what do you do? I want to really get a sense of, okay, so you've moved back. You're in Kinshasa. When you wake up, because I'll add, I was reading kind of a profile that you sent.
Yes.
And on there is running a school tuck shop.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So you talk about media, you talk about as being an artist, you talk about all of the stuff, and then over here you have school tuck shop.
Yeah.
So I'm not asking, so what do you do in a Joburg sense? Like, when we're meeting in the club, it's like, yo, what do you do? Or hey, let's have coffee.
Let's
tomorrow.
have coffee. Let's link up.
Yeah.
I'll send you that email.
Exactly.
I see the vision. Let's link up. Let's talk. Nah, that's crazy. I'm a small business owner because, like you said, on the continent, the economy is so unstable. Jobs are so limited. So when I moved back home, most Congolese people, I guess most Africans would know this. It's like, when you come back as a diaspora and say if you didn't come back killing it, according to them, they're like, you know what? Oh, it was great that you did all that art stuff, but now you're home. Must cut your hair, must wear a suit, and I want to present you, because that's how it is over there. It's not you applying. It's a plug, right? So like your mom or your dad or your auntie will come and take you directly to the minister and be like, this is my son. It doesn't matter what you've achieved. And I tried that and it worked kinda, but that space is a bit crazy because it's not about your skills. It's about, say for example, you're doing social media management for a minister in Congo, right? And you're talking about data and reach and all of that, and they're like, okay, cool, whatever. And they have a team that their strategy is putting them on national news and newspapers. And we in 2018, 19. So there's a clash because they feel like you coming in to take their job and to take their money. And most people of power are surrounded by yes men, right? Not by people that actually care about amplifying their image. It's like, you get paid to be a yes man. So there was a clash in that sense. So then you start to scope, like you said, you start to see, because I went back with this Joburg, South Africa Model C mentality. It's like, oh, you guys aren't advanced, I'm bringing all the solutions, which I am. But, that's not the way to approach. And I kind of learned the hard way. And then also it's just like, what makes money every day? You need to give the people what they need first, because that's not like when you go to a place like Congo and most African countries, you don't come with a solution for wants. It's more for needs, right? So what do people need? I figured people need customer service, good customer service, quality customer service. I'm like, what are people doing to survive? They're all selling stuff on the streets and whatever. So I'm like, if I can do what everyone is doing, but just make it look cooler, then we're good, because my target market is mostly young people or the diaspora or expats. That was my main target market when I started. So the tuck shop was just like my friend's family owned the school, and there's 4 schools in the surrounding area. So a friend of mine that also grew up in South Africa were like, that's how I got into food, because Now I've got a small business which we are developing into a restaurant where we're actually selling kotas, which is crazy in itself as well. Because on top of being a small business owner, I export South African culture to the DRC. So it made sense. I'm like, if there's 5,000 kids around us every day, and there was a tuck shop already, but it was closed. So I was like, I'm just gonna build it like the tuck shops, like we spoke about my childhood in South Africa. I was like, these children have never had that experience. So I got my friends, we put some graffiti, and we bought like stationery, made it look like a tuck shop, and that's how we're making money. And like on a daily, I was making like $30 at the time, and I was using that money to go like to meetings at the bank to pitch for my events and stuff like that. And then we got hit by COVID, and then after COVID, I developed the food business now. And I'm looking at developing more business because it's all about residual income. People talk about Pakistanis and all these people coming into the space, but it's like that's where most of the money is. That's why they're trying to regulate small businesses, because it's $1 billion business. And like we say in French, il n'y a pas de sot métier, which means there isn't small jobs. And we as Black people tend to not want to do those type of things. We all want to work in the office. We all want to do classy things. But trust me, that Pakistani has more money than you, because people need to eat and drink every day. So once you figure that out on a continent, I'm giving away the game. Once you got your residual income, then you can have the money to chase your so-called bigger dreams, because we're not all going to get that plug to be in mining or whatever the case might be.
You are listening to the Listen to Your Footsteps podcast, a podcast in which I chat to Africans from a cross-section of society and sectors, including art, culture, design, business, and creativity, to name a few. We delve into their journeys, the decisions they have taken to get to where they are, how they do what they do, and everything in between. Essentially, we go wherever the spirit takes us. Now let's get back into the conversation. And so the eventing business?
The eventing business is amazing because young people want to have a good time. That's simple as that. And they want, especially on the continent, they want Instagram, but like in real life, right? So if you're staying, say, for example, in Libreville in Gabon, and you see a party from Joburg or New York, you want that, right? Or if you're in Kinshasa and you see these creatives from Rosebank or Bram, you want that because you're staying in an environment where your parents are telling you that art is not a real thing, music is not a real thing. You're going to get over it by the time you're 18 and you need to find a job. But like you said, there's no jobs, right? Like in Kinshasa, everyone's a lawyer, but I don't think there's so much law happening. So it was important for me to just show these kids that it's possible. There's another way out. And kids all over the continent are looking at South Africa because South Africa is more tangible than the US. It's like there's someone not far from me that's actually living that life. So I guess when I moved back to the DRC, I was like that bridge between the kids and living a cultural life. And also between just corporates. I really push corporates to do more, to like sell yourself, because like you've traveled Africa, marketing budget is like a sin. No one wants to spend on marketing, but everyone wants to make money. And then you have corporates like in Congo that still want to rely on word of mouth. So just one more thing. I know I'm talking a lot. It's a podcast anyway. My corporate experience.
That's what you're here for.
Yeah. My corporate experience helped me a lot in the Congo and as an entrepreneur, because I was able to apply that discipline into my everyday life. So when I wake up as if I'm going to work, because my life is now my work. Mm-hmm. So if you're not waking up, if you don't have the same discipline, so when I work corporate, I'd wake up at 4, and by 5 I'm at the bus stop, and by 6 I'm at the office having my coffee, and then I do my thing, and then 5, like that routine. So now that's what I'm doing in my life, that corporate discipline. The way I deal with my team, we're still doing the emails, we're still like, it's like, it looks cool. And that's why a lot of people like quit when they work for me, because what they see on Instagram is like 10% and there's so much work behind it. Yeah.
I don't think I could work for you. I'm not part of the 5 a.m. club. I'm not.
You don't like waking up early?
No, I don't do the, I've reached the point where I've structured my life slightly differently.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not to take away from it. It's like I did we Africans, we grind hard.
Yes.
And then kind of reached the stage where it was like, when I was joking, say I started working for my father when I was 12. I think I've put in a lot of years of work.
That's amazing though.
And so my focus is always on what I need to get done. So I focus on, and I've been like that even when I worked for other people.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're paying me for deliverables. You're not paying me for the time my butt is in the seat, which was often
that's a conversation.
Which was often in conflict with. I haven't worked for other people a lot, but it was in conflict with those spaces. But then I have the privilege of having reached the point where I can structure and design my life to operate how it operates. And as a starting point, I do the school run every morning. So
you take your children to school.
So literally, everything unfolds from that. So I was talking to, I've been talking to friends about like meditation.
Yeah.
And my challenge with meditation is that the way my mornings run, because I'm a big believer in routine. So if you want to develop a habit, I believe you need to incorporate it into your routine. So there's certain things I do in the morning that are part of my routine, and to get meditation in, which I feel I need to do, but to get that in, it means I need to start my day earlier. And I end my days late as it is, which I'm still trying to figure out. So like, I'm always not scrambling in the mornings, but I'm not as fresh as I should be
in the mornings.
I
mean, fortunately for me, I'm not as on cruise control as you are, but I'm definitely the most I've been in my life. So, I mean, the past 8 years in Congo has permitted for me to be here during what most people in South Africa would consider office hours and doing this podcast, because I've created a system for myself. It took 8 years. That's why, like, people would be like, it's not easy, right? Because we have this capitalistic system which drives you to grind all the time. So I put in like going back to Congo, I'm here to work so that by the time I'm 40, I can work from distance. And I'm already working from distance now. And waking up early just means I have more time for gym, more time for meditation, and then just time to, say for example, in Congo, obviously my life is more intense than it is in South Africa because I'm the person with the most experience on my team. So the micromanagement and the follow-up is insane, right? I'm literally doing everyone's job. So you have to wake up earlier. You have the challenge of electricity. So you could wake up, there's no electricity or there's no water, right? And then like you have to wake up early because if I have a Teams or Zoom with America or South Africa, I have to make sure A, my phone is charged, B, there's no noise around me. So you just have to wake up earlier because you don't know, traffic is unpredictable. So there's so many factors. If I'm going into town, I have to leave 3 hours earlier because you don't know what traffic is going to be like. So it's not the same reality. So in South Africa, I wake up at 5 and I go and meditate. In Congo, I wake up at 5 and first thing, is there electricity? Is there water? Do I have to go and carry the water? Because when there's no water, I can't take a shower. So the dynamics, just the admin of getting ready is a whole job. And I don't live in the ghetto. I live in it's a nice area, but that's just the reality, right? So if it rains, sometimes you can't even leave.
So I mean, it's
can't leave the house.
Like I have this belief that every city has its own rhythm.
Because that's Kinshasa, sorry. Yeah. I don't want people to think like, because when I'm in Lubumbashi, which is also in the Democratic Republic of Congo, I almost have the same liberty as South Africa. Because it also has those Congo problems, but less, right? There's more infrastructure. You can get around easier. So like you're in the same country. And Kinshasa is the capital, which is supposed to be better. So I don't want people to think like, oh, it's like that all over Congo. But the place where it's supposed to be running it's a bit, not a bit. It's quite messed up.
But it's like I was saying, every space has its own rhythm.
Yeah.
And I used to see it when I still lived in Lesotho, and I'd watch people come in, say from Joburg.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, you went in the beginning with the Joburg mentality.
Yeah.
And it's like you get there, and sometimes you learn the hard way that, okay, this space, that energy is great for Joburg.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at South Africa, Joburg, Cape Town, there's still a different rhythm to it. And I don't think we often take the time to just take a step back. So you've just given the example of two cities, and you've gone, yeah, they're different rhythms.
Yes.
So you needed to figure out, okay, when I'm in this one, this is the rhythm. These are where my expectations need to be versus when I'm in this space.
Yeah, you learn that. And I've been telling a lot of my South African friends is like, when you travel, have zero expectations. I think we spoke about it when we met last week. Is just have no expectations, because your standard could be so high or so low depending on where you're staying, that when you get somewhere, it's like when you're from Joburg, Congo's far, Lesotho's far. Just go to Bloom and or PE, and just like everyone's like, oh, you're running. That's good for you. Keep running. And I think traveling South Africa extensively prepared me for Congo as well. Because as much as I went into Congo with that mentality, but already traveling through South Africa, I was like, oh, Joburg is actually a thing on its own when you travel through South Africa. Never mind the rest of Africa. It's like the pace in Joburg is so fast. Because I remember the first time going to Cape Town, I felt like I was a gangster. I felt like I was aggressive, because everyone's just like, oh, that's such a far drive. But I'm like, I drive further to go to school in Joburg. So traveling is very important, and just adapting to other people's way of living. But when you're an entrepreneur, it's kind of like everyone's way of living is an opportunity for you, because now you have to cater for that, and like just using your Joburg speed, but still catering for those people at the same time. So I found a fusion of like, okay, this is how it works, but my advantage from coming from Joburg is going to help me in satisfying whatever is the consumer's need over here.
So what does the future look like? The immediate future
for me?
For you?
I want to look after my body, because we're only heading in one direction. So that's my immediate future, just to look after my body and to continue doing what I'm doing, but just do it better and build relationships. Because I'm selling Congo to the world. I'm selling the Congo that no one wants to show, which is the next place to be in fashion, in music, in art, in tourism, because that's the potential that we have. That's what we stopped from doing. And I feel like the young people from Congo, we just want to do what other young people are doing across the world. So part of me coming to South Africa and having the blessing of being on such an incredible platform is to do that, to promote the Congo and tell the brands and tell the publications, come through. I'm your guy. I will help you, because I've been staying there all this time, and the young people are pushing the country forward. And yeah, that's the immediate future, just to promote the Congo and look after my body, because if my body is not healthy, then I can't promote the Congo, and then my job will be cut short.
It's also important, I think, that perception is important, because kind of news around a space, the narrative around a place, particularly from an African perspective, always tends to be very one-dimensional. Right? So, I can imagine, because of your relationship with South Africa, and you come back regularly, and you have friends here, and with that perception of Congo, and then hearing that you left this to go back to Congo, and it's like, are you?
People thought I was crazy.
Are you mad?
People in Congo were like, "Bro, you left McDonald's." Like, people thought I was insane when I moved back to Congo. Especially my friends over here, they're like, "Bro, you're on TV, you're on radio. Like, why would you leave this to go back?" Because for a lot of Congolese people leave Congo saying that they're never gonna go back. That's a reality. Especially the ones that reach the US. Oh, it doesn't need like I told you, like it's heaven, then it's America, then it's Paris for Congolese people. So like, you know, the only place better than those two places, Paris and the United States, is so like, yeah. But when you want to own something, I guess if you're South African, the best place to own something is in South Africa. If you're Ghanaian, the best place to own something is in Ghana, and Congolese as well. So I have very big ambitions, and I wanted to acquire land because land is power. And I was like, chances of doing that in South Africa is slim to none, because people that look like me that are South African are already fighting for that. So that was also like the pivot into being mature. And this actually happened like 2 years ago when I finally forgave South Africa, because I was like, South Africa's got its own issues. And when people have issues in their home, they have to fix that first. So that was like my maturity and being grateful for what I just learned in South Africa.
You still doing the music?
Yeah, I'm still doing music at my pace, which is lovely. I just dropped a mixtape, Dead Drive, in November. I dropped it on Halloween. It was October on Halloween. And yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I'm on the right streaming platforms, like the whole payout, and you know, it's a lot. So because I'm running my small businesses and I don't have a team committed to my music, I'm trying to just get someone to be committed to that. But yeah, I'm going at a slow pace. It's beautiful to do it now because there's no pressure to be on the charts or to like do anything, you know. So yeah, I'm doing it very, very slowly. And
when you started, was that the objective? Like when you started, was the idea of being an artist, okay, I'm gonna make the charts and I'm gonna tour the world and I'm gonna do XYZ?
When I started music, it was for fun. And I started music in a group. And because of Puff Daddy, I wanted to be the guy that just has one verse. I never wanted to be like, you know, because I always hung out with guys who could sing and do that. So like my mentality was a group thing. And because I've always had this like managerial boss. So I was like, I'm going to be the guy in the background, but I'm still in the group type of vibe. And also my whole idea for doing music was like, I can't go to film school. So music videos will be practice for directing. And me being in front of the camera would be practice for acting, because I did theater in high school. So in grade 11, this whole rap thing took over. Academics kind of slowed down. Sports totally out the way. And I did drama. So grade 11, I won Best Supporting Actor. And then matric, I won Best Actor. So like now I'm on stage. So now my confidence, because if you can do stage, then you can definitely do the camera. Because I was on stage. It was Roald Dahl's version of Cinderella, and already, because Eddie Murphy is my unicorn when it comes to acting, I was like, I'm gonna flip this character, and the evil prince, because in Roald Dahl's version of Cinderella, the prince is evil, and I twisted it into a Nigerian character. So then that gave me the confidence to do that, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna use music as a platform and then the group fell apart, and then I never went to AFTER, and then before I know it, I'm on MTV. Because what happened is like I would be the front man of the group, and then after a while, people just wanted to see me because the other guys would never come to the interviews and stuff. And before I knew it, I have the solo career without an album, just like dropping random singles. So like the music just went crazy without me really. It's kind of like you said, like when you don't plan anything, music for me was just an outlet to express my cinematic. Because even if you see my music videos, it's all shot cinematic style, all filtered as if like it's a movie and stuff like that. So music just took a life of its own, and then I've got this fan base that's like wants to kill me when I don't drop music. So like I never took myself seriously as a musician, but yeah, and then next thing a musician, right? And then the business side of it, I love making music, but I can't deal with the music business. You know, I can't deal with payola and all of that stuff and favors and, you know, playlisting. Because it was fun in the beginning when I wasn't a hectic entrepreneur, because I could send my own emails. Because I had relationships like at radio stations and things like that. But now when you're running all these businesses, keeping up those relationships a bit hectic. And like when you're making money somewhere else, it's kind of like, you know. So now I'm really enjoying it. If it's still serious for the people that's watching, but for me, not really. And if it blows up, cool. But I never had the vision to be like a pop star or whatever. I never had that vision. It was a mistake. It was a mistake. But music has been great to me. It's given me the platform to do everything else. Yeah.
What do you do when you're not working?
Watching movies and like nothing. That's my new thing. When I'm not working, just doing nothing. Because what I enjoy is my work now. I do nothing and just have conversations like these, but not about work. And I'm really, like I said, like just this health journey. So let's do walks, let's do picnics, let's just do adventurous stuff. Like my grandmother would say, let's do white stuff. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to do more white stuff, you know? I've been working too hard. Yeah.
No, thank you, man.
I might skydive once I get the balls to do it soon. Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck to you.
You look
Enjoy
like
that?
you've skydived before.
No.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I usually have a story for stuff. So I, with a group of friends, years ago, before kids. So the idea was like once a month. So my wife used to organize these dinners once a month. We'd try a different restaurant because everybody's busy. Everybody's busy during the month. So we'd all get together, 14, 15 people at a new restaurant and just catch up. Then we started doing activities. And our first activity was rap jumping. So rap jumping is like abseiling.
Oh, okay.
But abseiling, you go down, you go backwards. Rap jumping, you go forwards. So you lean off the building, faced first, and you look straight down.
Okay.
And then you have a rope. And so abseiling, you move the one rope, and that enables you to move. So with this, you walk down
a building.
And I did that in Joburg in the Parktonian Hotel. And I discovered that I'm not as gung-ho as I always thought I was. And since then, because skydiving was one of the next things, was on the list of, okay, maybe next month or 2 months from now, we're going to do skydiving. And after I did that, I was like, do you know what? Actually, I'm good.
Yo, I'm such a loser that I was offered for free to bungee jump at the Soweto Towers. and I bailed out, man.
I went to...
Like, yo, I'm too black for that, yo. I'm afraid of heights.
I went to... is it called Blokrans? That's in the Western Cape. It's the highest bungee bridge.
Wow.
And I went there actually towards the end of last year, not too long ago. I was at a car launch and we stopped there and they were like, if you want to jump, you can jump.
If you want to jump.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not jumping.
I don't want to jump.
We walked on so you walk on this pathway. It's like 200 meters. You can see down through the walkway because it's metal mesh, this mesh thing. And they were like, even if you're not jumping, you can be in the section to kind of be closer to the edge. I'm like, no. I went and I sat down and I'm like, I'm too old. Peer pressure does not affect me whatsoever. Yeah. So yeah, like I said, as I've grown older, I've learned. I used to think I was quite macho and quite gung-ho.
Oh no.
And quite a daredevil. I got that out.
And it's okay to not be.
I got that out of my system. Okay, I stopped worrying about that over 10 years ago.
Like I saw, are you into bikes? I saw on your page. Are you into
Yes, I ride a motorcycle.
So that's extreme enough.
It's not extreme.
You think? It's
not
extreme. You got a super bike, and that's not extreme.
Well, I actually don't have a super bike. I mean, I have if we're going to be technical, but if I'd started riding a motorcycle, I always say if I'd started riding a motorcycle in my 20s, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. I started riding a motorcycle in my 40s, and my relationship with riding is I think maybe very different from a lot of people, especially when you're younger. I learned more about mindfulness when I started riding a motorcycle than all the stuff that I've read. For me, riding a motorcycle is opportunity to be with yourself, because even when you're riding with other people, it's just you beneath that helmet. You need to be very present. You need to be very conscious. And that has a value in my life. So I don't ride it for the speed. I ride it for the experience. I ride it for what enables, how it enables me to come to terms with myself. Makes sense.
Does make sense.
Right. So when I first started riding, I actually wrote a blog post saying I don't have a death wish, because people automatically assume. And the biggest risk to motorcycle riders is car drivers. Right. So
not the concrete if they fall over.
No, so because I've done multiple courses.
Okay.
When I'm out and I'm on the road, I'm not reckless. It's when I'm in traffic and people are on their phones and doing their makeup and reading or looking at their music and just changing lanes. Like, that's the greater risk to me than if I'm on the open road, if I'm on a highway, cruising along at 120. And when I come to curves, I'm thinking about it, like, oh, there's a curve coming, my speed, all of those things. That I can control to a certain extent. But I cannot control somebody just changing lanes because they've seen a little gap. And they're just going to change without checking.
All the ladies that's like doing their makeup while driving should be arrested.
Well, cell phones.
That's
the number of times people are on cell phones. I became a better driver of my car when I started riding a motorbike.
Because you were able to.
Because now I've been the other side.
Yeah.
And I recognize how precarious it is. And so I'm very conscious of motorcycles. My wife has become a better driver of a car since I started riding, because then she started recognizing motorcycles a lot.
Wow. Your relationships with motorcycles is quite profound and extended. And look at God. God is good because he allowed for you to get into that space when you're already sure, like you said, if you started in your 20s.
Yeah. And I guess the nature of what I do means that I've had to think about it, because the minute you go, I ride a motorcycle, like you did. We're talking about being kind of gung-ho and daredevils. And then you went, oh, I saw a motorcycle. Because the minute somebody sees motorcycle, there's a particular assumption. You know, and if you speak to most people who ride motorcycles, you'll find there's a certain element of liberation.
You know, compared to the perception, because my older cousin rides as well, I've noticed people that ride, in my experience, people that ride are very relaxed and chilled. They don't have this daredevil mentality. You know, I guess because it's quite a brave thing to do, riding at that type of speed, according to just us normal humans. So that's why the perception is like, oh, if you ride, that means like, yo, you got some balls, you're an extremist, you know. But that's just the perception that most people have, because it's just a lack of education.
And it's its own world. And I discovered one of the things I found was there are people, you know, like each of us has our thing. And with motorcycles, because I still write on them, but I remember talking to one or two of the manufacturers, and they were trying to get more people to ride. And they got a bunch of people from different media platforms to go and do a beginner's course. Because beginner's courses, it's weird. Like that's how I started riding. Like, it's 4 hours. You get there, and as long as you know how to ride a bicycle, and when you leave 4 hours later, you can basically ride a motorcycle.
Motorcycle.
But so they they provided them with a free course. Whole media thing, all went out, rode motorcycles. I don't think any of those people, and this is a good 8-9 years ago, I don't think any of those people ride motorcycles today. And I remember a friend of mine, he was an editor of a magazine, and I was chatting to him about it. And he was like, yeah, it was cool. But
Cool experience.
yeah, it was cool, but yeah, I don't think so. And one of the things my theory or one of my realizations was there are those who will connect with it, majority won't. So you can put a bunch of us in a particular experience, but it's for those of us, it's like I connected, I did a course and I was like, okay, I want to get a bike, and I did a course and discovered that I'm a motorcycle person. Like there's something about it that I connect with. And I've met multiple people where it's like they haven't got that in them. And it's not good or bad, it's just, okay, that's your thing. And it's finding, just like there are people who cycle and it's their thing. Like we were riding bicycles growing up, and I've got friends who mountain bike, and that's their thing. And they're not interested in a motorcycle. So, yeah.
Can I ask you a question? Should we come to Ghana, since Ghana is inviting us all? Or is it better for African Americans?
So the second part, the last part of your statement is the interesting one, because with the new president, it's going to be interesting how that whole packaging, that whole year of the return, then which became decade of the return. So I went to, the longest I spent in Ghana, I said earlier, was a month.
Yeah.
And in December 2019, I went with my family and we spent a month there. And I actually went to a talk. And a Canadian Ghanaian woman got up in this talk. There was a panel, and then afterwards, the questions and stuff. And she articulated something that I'd been struggling with, which was at the time, the whole idea around Year of the Return felt like it was for the diaspora. Yeah. So
the Ghanaian diaspora first.
No, Black Americans and say Europeans. And it felt like those of us who are, say, first generation, second generation have grown up outside weren't included in that. That said, there are opportunities, and I have friends who have moved back from wherever they happen to be in the world or where they happen to grow up, just as you've moved back, and we will have the same struggles.
Yeah.
I've never been Mosotho enough. I have never been Ghanaian enough. I am not South African. I'm not German enough. Right? So
you have more enough than me.
It's like you belong, but you don't belong. Yeah. And it's a weird space to be, but it doesn't mean that there are not opportunities. So, I mean, I would say there's space for you. Like, I would think I'd love to come to Kinshasa and just check out the space.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. Wow. And go, I was there, and hey, there's this opportunity. Yeah. We can do this thing together because there's an opportunity, and why not? We still need to get to the point on this continent where we can do business and set up home spaces in different countries on the continent where, maybe in 2 months' time we both happen to be in Nairobi.
Yeah. And
let's hang out in Nairobi because there's XYZ going on. And we still need to get to that stage. So with Ghana, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what the new government, how the new government.
Is it election year now?
No, there was elections. New president was inaugurated. What? First week.
How did you guys manage to keep it so smooth? Like, elections in Africa is always a horror movie.
No, elections. I mean, there's. You must also remember it's where our attention is, right?
Yeah.
So I knew about it because whether it's on social media or whether it's in my friendship circles, I have a Ghanaian network because that's part of my lens.
Of course.
So I will know, I'll have a greater sense of what's kind of going on there. Whereas you would have, if you're sitting in Kinshasa, you're still plugged into South Africa. So you still have a sense of what's going on here, just like you have a sense of what's happening there. So you must remember, like, there's stuff happening on this continent all the time, and it's not always highlighted, and it's not always negative.
Yeah, that's the thing. Right. We're just so used to, like, look, for example, Mozambique, Senegal last year, whatever. We're just so used to, on this continent, when it's elections, it's a noise. It's just a lot. So that's why I was surprised that Ghana, for good or bad, it just went under the radar. Because usually when there's elections in Africa, you're going to know about that country. Yeah.
Whereas for me, it's like it didn't go under the radar because I was following, right?
You were following, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, because it's the new president is, I mean, he's a new old president. But I mean, so Ghana,
new old president, he's back.
Yeah, he is back, but also I think he had one term, the first time or a term and a half, because the previous president passed away, and then he
had to step in.
But yeah, I mean, it's like everywhere on the continent, each country has its own unique and interesting politics. That is, but I wouldn't necessarily want to get into.
Yeah.
Like I've spent enough times on the edges, not getting involved in anything. But so with the new president, it'll be interesting to see kind of how all of that is packaged. I mean, with Ghana, not everybody talks about Dirty December, and because December, that's when everybody descends on and parties, and that's of zero interest to me. Yeah, so I had friends, going, "Are you coming to be in Ghana this December?" I'm like, I'd rather go in March, or June.
Yeah. See other things.
Yeah,
other
and
opportunities.
Go catch up with my people. Yeah. See other things. Thinking of being there this coming December. And it's still, I'm talking to friends that like the islands and there's, beach. I want to be away from. I did my party.
Had a great time. Nice time.
I did my bit.
Yeah, but also, like, if you're speaking to people, I don't know. This is from my experience, like, because I have cousins in the diaspora and things like that. They just see Africa as a vacation spot. Like, I was asking my cousin who lives in Paris, I was like, what are your ambitions? It's like, get a good job and health insurance. I'm like, wow. I'm like, that you can own acres of land, and like just opening up his mind to more. I think it's wearing off, but he's just like, I just want to come to Africa to vacate, and whereby when I'm thinking about Ghana, I'm not thinking about 30 December. I'm thinking about like what opportunities are there for me.
Look, there are opportunities everywhere, and I think that lens will start to change. Yeah, like you're saying, as more and more of us are doing things, and starting to share those things, and showing people, yes, there are opportunities.
Because it's also not their fault. They only what they see is their reality. I mean, if you're black and born in France, for example, your reality is totally different from us born on the continent, or you get a job. That's all they see. But when, like you said, when they see, so for example, like when they see this conversation already inspires people in Congo and in other African countries, but we're also inspiring people in the diaspora because they don't see a way of coming back here. They're like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? Kind of like when I was going back to Congo. But obviously, I'd been to Congo before, And my family was there, so we have that connection. But a lot of the diaspora, especially Congolese diaspora, that go there and their parents are like, you're not going to speak Lingala. If you're in England, you're not going to speak French. It's kind of like that becomes your life. And you don't see how you'll go back home. But when you see podcasts, events, and whatever, it's like, okay, this is like what I'm doing here. And I can do that. So our responsibility, especially those of us that are in South Africa and that have the resources and the infrastructure, is to show people that it can be done, not only in Africa, but in South Africa as well. Because I remember doing a road show, I think we're in Stanger, and a kid told me that he couldn't wait to matriculate just so he can move to Durban so he can record. So there's a lot to be done. Like, we mustn't think that we can only influence people that's far. Sometimes it's in our city, sometimes it's in our country, sometimes it's in our community.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me, and God bless.
Thank you for listening to this conversation. Please leave a review and subscribe. Check out the show notes for links to the guest, the podcast, and myself. I hope you enjoyed listening to the conversation as much as I enjoyed having it.